So I had the pleasure of reading Torchfire, the second book in the Torch trilogy by Moira Buffini. This book comes out on the 25th of August. Thank you to Faber for letting me read it early. I thought this was a good time to talk about Torchfire because you have enough time to pause this video, add it to your favourites so that you can watch it later, go to the bookshop, pick up Songlight, read Songlight, enjoy Songlight. It's a delightful book. Then this will come out and you get that immediate hit of the sequel book. And I think this book is fab. There are so many writers nowadays that are trying to recreate that YA buzz that was so famous 10, 15 years ago. And I can't think of anyone who is doing it as successfully as Moira Buffini in this series, because I was having the best time. Like, it really took me back to a time and a place when I was just 10 years old, and I would read lots of sci-fi dystopian books that had similar themes to this one. It just has that transformative factor to it that I think you'll be able to appreciate as well. What really stood out to me on this one is how similar the events are, the actual story progression, to the Poppy War trilogy. If you're at all interested in Rebecca Kuang, high fantasy, epic fantasy, warring factions, I think you'll enjoy these books as well, because even though it is young adult, it could very easily be marketed as a more serious adult fantasy, because there are mature themes. And yeah, I think there's definitely a cross-compatibility between the genres. Something that I love as well is that it's a Song of Ice and Fire in this book at least. There's not really a main character. We have so many POVs and it can be a bit difficult to keep track of them all. But I like that no one in this book is really the focal point, because in Songlight, I wouldn't say that was the case. I would say that Lark is our main character. The story is sort of framed around her POV as she discovers that she has Songlight, this forbidden telepathic trait. But the second book feels a lot more multiple POV, three-dimensional. We see both sides. There's heroes and villains, and we get an idea of each corner of the story. And I prefer that because there are naturally going to be characters that you gravitate towards more, people whose chapters that you enjoy more than others, versus having it centered in one person's POV that can feel a little tunnel visioned. So I liked that this was a bit more of a bird's eye view of the whole universe. So me, for instance, my two favourite POVs were Swan and Piper. Swan I love because she's one of these very complicated female characters who could be seen as evil, but I would argue is more misunderstood. She's a victim of childhood trauma, and the situation that she's been dealt is not a very nice one. And so she's got these constant dilemmas of, should she, support the bad people in her life, or should she seek redemption? She's very multifaceted. I like her a lot. But then Piper, some really fascinating LGBTQIA plus representation in this world as well, because we have a character who is not happy with their sexuality because the faction that he lives under, it's forbidden. So he's very much no homo, queer panic, but then it keeps finding its way into his life. He ends up having a relationship and he has to keep it under wraps because he's this accomplished fighter pilot. And so I found all of that very well done as well. I don't yet know how I feel about the ex-simians. So in this book, again, very similar to the Poppy War, in the second book of the Poppy War, the Dragon Republic, we're introduced to the Hesperians, who are analogous for Western colonizer imperialists, basically white people. And this is very similar, where we have the Ex-Simians. They're this other, they're this faction that more or less seem like aliens, they've come from Mars, but they have Songlight, and so they see in the people that have Songlight kindred spirits, but then they have these very strong ideas about essentially ethnic cleansing, again very similar to the Hesperians. So it's very much the Dragon Republic, this book, where you see the civil war between the two factions that we met in the last book, but then we've also got this overlord faction, these people that are the others, who are clearly going to become the main antagonist in the third book, and I am very here for that. If we're going to critique anything, I do think some of the characters lean a bit into caricatures in the way that they just feel very tropish. I think my one that I had the most gripes with was Kite. So like the big baddie in the story, Kite, he he just doesn't have a lot of layers. He's just like a bad guy, you know, and we never really get to understand or appreciate why he's the way he is and why everyone is so submissive around him. Like, he doesn't really seem to have any friends. So then you're wondering why he's like the big leader of everything. Like, what actually does he have over all of these people, you know? Like, because they even say how he's really unpopular with the general population of their faction, and so that's why Swan, she's sort of like the spin doctor who's like talking to all of these people, trying to repair his public image with her speeches. But for me, it just doesn't pan out that way. Like, following the events from the last book, I just don't see how he could legitimize his rule. It feels like there would have been more pushback, but those are just details. I do love these series where, even though it's fantastical, it's in like a far future land that's very like scientific, and most of the earth is underwater, so these factions very much live on like the island remains of Earth. There's still political takeaways, there's still things that apply to how we're living now. Like, a lot of their belief system regarding the treatment of women is very red pill incel type behavior. Like, the men are allowed to have 3 wives, and like one of the wives' sole purpose is just to like make babies. Like, it's a very misogynistic world. The women aren't allowed to read or write. And so in that sense, it's quite a smart cautionary tale where these characters are at ends with their political differences and their ideas about how women and other people should be treated. Of course, I mentioned earlier the latent homophobia in their society and how gay people aren't allowed to express themselves either. It's fascinating. I like the way it handles these very serious themes. And I just know that if I was reading this when I was like 10, 11, 12, like, I would have been living my life. Like, I would have been obsessed with this. I mean, I am still now. And I need someone to buy the rights to this. Because a TV show of the Torch trilogy would be awesome. So if I've not convinced you yet, please pick up the Torch trilogy. As I said, start with Songlight. You have enough time that by the time Torchfire comes out, you'll probably finish Songlight and you'll feel that itch. Of course, we are going to have to wait a year now for book 3. I mean, when the proofs of book 3 do come out, Moira Buffini, I need to meet you because your books give me life. I tried to meet you at Bookfest. We won't talk about that catastrophe. But it's happening. I'm going to meet you. I would please like all 3 of my books to be signed because this series gives me life.